3 months ago, Claire Redfield survived one of the worst disasters imaginable. Between the zombies then, William Birkin and the insidious Chief Irons, and everything else Raccoon threw at her, you'd think she'd have every reason to stop trusting people. But that's just not Claire's style, is it? Because Claire is somebody who still believes in people. After everything she's been through, it would have been a lot easier for her to come out the other side a little more bitter, cynical, or simply just broken by it all. Instead, she somehow walked into Raccoon City with her humanity and managed to walk back out with it, still wanting to protect people and still refusing to give up on her family. So 3 months later then, her refusal to let go is exactly why she's still here, searching for Chris and still willing to walk straight into danger. The problem with that is, the humanity in her doesn't make her bulletproof, instead it makes her vulnerable. Because while Claire is willing to gamble everything for the people she loves, there's also plenty of people in this world willing to take advantage of that. And that's the gamble she makes at the very start of Code Veronica. She barely escapes one nightmare, right? Yet here she is breaking into an umbrella facility with no real backup plan, no real preparation. So naturally you want her to succeed, right? You want her to find Chris. But from the very beginning then, you can already tell she's walking into something far bigger than what she's prepared for, because unfortunately for Claire, she's about to find out about another family and what they're willing to gamble for it. It goes without saying then, Claire's actions of her storming umbrella result in her confinement on this remote island, far far away from the normal world and her brother Chris. Now she's all alone in a dark cell, probably wondering why the last person she saw didn't pull that trigger. Considering all of this then, seriously, she might even be thinking this is a fate worse than death, but looking back on it now, it almost feels like a bit of a mercy compared to what just happened moments ago. Claire's surprised then, that mercy she wakes up to inside of this prison cell is only the beginning, because the prison warden standing right in front of her suddenly unlocks her cell and lets her go. Now, naturally Claire's confused, a little apprehensive too, and rightfully so, seeing as those were the last pair of eyes she saw before ending up in a locked away dark cell, right? So it's going to take her mind a second to adjust, when now those very same eyes responsible for her captivity are suddenly letting her free. Because what she's working with here isn't just confusion of being released, but the condition the warden now finds himself in, that being is injured and exhausted. And whatever happened to this place has clearly happened pretty fast. The warden then brushes her questions to one side almost immediately. Instead, he not so subtly lets her know she's got much bigger problems than simply being trapped on this island.
Perfect.
And that's something I really like about this opening, because before Claire has even had the chance to understand where she is, the game is already telling both her and us that whatever's happened outside of these prison walls is bad enough to make this man who locked her up decide she's better off taking her chances out there. Let that sink in for a second. The prison warden, the man whose job is to keep Claire locked away, has reached the point where he no longer thinks the cell is the safest place for her. So then, what exactly is waiting up ahead? Well, Claire doesn't have to wait long to find out. Which are one of the many reasons she's going to need to find Chris before everything around her gets turned into one of them. And when she's caught in that first zombie ambush, you can already see it in her eyes. She's still that same Claire from just a few months ago after Raccoon City, still carrying those experiences with her and still fighting through them, as you can see. Unfortunately for her, this island she now finds herself in has no intention of letting her heal and move beyond her past burdens. Then again, if zombies and imprisonment wasn't enough to stop Claire, imagine how annoyed we'd all be if she got taken out by a hail of bullets by some random kid. The two eventually stop trying to shoot each other and settle for just being sort of friends.
Shut up! Make one wrong move and I'll shoot!
Steve was even quick to notice Claire looking kinda fly in that choker. To be fair though, considering the sort of regime running this place, Claire was bound to bump into the yard, every man for himself type, right? She escaped captivity because the island's under attack, and Steve, just like her, is also just trying to survive it. Speaking of then, not much is known about whoever attacked the island yet. I guess for now then, the more Claire explores, the more answers she's gonna find, even if she has to chase after Steve to get him.
I don't want you following me, lady.
There's almost an instant separation anxiety after he legs it again, and I sort of don't really blame her too much for it because she's stranded on a remote island all by herself, right? And the only other human she's spoken to has already disappeared around the next corner. Fair play to Claire, because for myself, the levels of homesick I'd be feeling right now, stuck on some random remote island with not a clue of how to get home, is tough enough to deal with on its own. Perish the thought of the PlayStation 6 releasing while I'm stuck in this fine mess. A lot of good that's gonna do me now anyway, right? Then again, if the prices don't kill you, something further up in the game probably will. Up ahead, Claire needs to watch her step, because most of this area actually feels strangely empty for now, which somehow makes it even more unsettling. And up ahead we see what looks like a prisoner dragging himself back into a hole beneath the building. I mean, why? It's Claire in a choker. What's he being shy about, right? The island's rubbishness though isn't done with us. After all of this, we get this up ahead.
Please deposit any metallic items you have in the security box.
And this thing's deadly serious. For those of you familiar with the game, need I say more? Stuff like this, I'd imagine, for Claire makes the journey towards Chris feel even more further away. Lucky for Claire though, Steve finally decides to stop running away from her. Even if he's caught looking through her business, it turns out he's just as desperate as her to escape this island, which accidentally hands Claire the first genuinely hopeful lead she's had all game.
I've got to contact Leon and tell him to let my brother know he's being monitored.
Steve then manages to source the island's coordinates, allowing Claire to finally email Leon in hopes that he'd be able to track down Chris for her. Ironically then, being trapped on a remote island is somehow getting Claire closer to Chris than she was before she arrived. I guess that's the idea anyway with this cutscene. In my mind though, it does beg the question how Claire ended up with Leon's email, which isn't exactly clear to me, but I would imagine somewhere during Raccoon City. While William Birkin was ruining everybody's day, Leon still somehow found 5 minutes to slip Claire his email. And it's only been 3 months since Raccoon City. I'm sure he's still got enough free time to help out Claire before he becomes Resident Evil's version of a 007, right? Spending the rest of his life dodging explosions and asking Hunnigan for her number.
You did it, Leon.
Thanks. You know you're kinda cute without those glasses. Give me your number when I get back.
May I remind you that you're still on duty.
One thing Steve does leave Claire thinking about though, after he's done talking rubbish about her family and then proceeds to leg it again, to us and probably Claire too, sounds a lot like somebody just projecting everything they never got with their own family.
What was that all about?
Right then, so in the middle of all this backtracking and the zombies rudely reminding Claire that they still exist the moment they bust through the security checkpoint, I still couldn't help but notice nothing around the prison so far really feels out of place until you head a little further up ahead on the island, when all of a sudden there's this massive gothic style palace sitting above everything else. Sort of like it's watching the whole island. Whoever's running the show here then definitely watched Scarface and loved it a little too much. Looking around though, by now it's seen better days. Sure, but the interior inside is sick. Check this out, even the toilets are made out of marble. What? The world is yours. Vibes aside though, actually looking at the state of the place, it might actually be more gangster's paradise compared to it being done up Scarface style before all of the mess anyway. And after looking around, there isn't actually much for us to do here. The only interesting looking door is locked behind a pair of Lugers, so all we need now is somebody willing to get fried for the pleasure of robbing them, and you know, we'll happily swoop in and claim the spoils. That's how saving people works, right? Steve unfortunately doesn't seem too interested in helping our progression in the story with Claire though.
You gotta be kidding. I found it and I'm keeping it.
As he'd rather waste her time until she finds him a suitable replacement. Lucky for him though, Claire is the sort of person who'd choose option 1 and simply help someone, than to choose option 2, which I'd much prefer, and to just smack him upside the head and take them off his hands anyway.
Give them to me.
Funny enough, just up ahead though, the person aiming the laser directly at Claire's forehead looks like it'd be happy to choose option 2 easily. Yeah, I'm sensing a pattern here. Nobody around so far then seems to like Claire. So what kind of boys club is this? Honestly speaking, I'm right there with Claire. Somebody needs to get me off this island immediately.
I've been expecting you, my brethrens.
No thanks, bro.
The zombies and Steve was one thing, now this lunatic, and trust me, I'm putting that lightly compared to what we learn later on, has a name, Alfred Ashford, grandson of one of Umbrella's founding families, and the cutscene clears up a few things, you know, somebody really did attack the island, and that's how the virus spread, how the monsters got loose and destroyed his palace, which, you know, fair enough, he has every right to be upset about all of this.
How dare you!
But Alfred standing there talking about monsters while behaving like one himself isn't exactly helping his case now, is it? I mean, talk about skipping the candlelit dinner, but at least now we know where we stand. Claire isn't just trying to survive zombies anymore, now she's got Scarface over here rigging the whole island, waiting for it to slip
Tell
up.
me, who do you work for? Who sent you? Have it your way then.
Every time she takes one step towards Chris, something knocks her 2 steps backwards. First we've got Steve legging it with our Lugers, and now the latest one with Scarface deciding that we're public enemy number 1. Look at it this way, he's got his way of showing loyalty to his family, and Claire has hers too, which, you know, she's gonna keep putting herself through all of these setbacks and rejections because finding Chris just means that much to her.
There's no way he could get here, even if he is your brother.
Yes, he can. I'm sure of it.
She only got to experience a tiny bit of catharsis from whoever attacked this island and accidentally set her free before the zombies showed up and ruined her day, and on top of that, now Scarface over here replacing it all, being another looming threat. You know, it's not like she has anywhere else to go, being stuck here. Claire's come this far, right? So it would be no doubt a big shame to stop now, because to her, Chris still feels like it's just around the corner. Unfortunately though, the game has something much bigger waiting. I'd imagine it's one of the creatures Alfred mentioned after the T-virus spread throughout the base.
The experimental T-virus was released, creating countless zombies and monsters. Unacceptable!
I really hope Claire enjoys her stay here on this remote island, far, far away, because around here, even harmless garden worms, as you can see, don't stay harmless for very long. So then, once Claire ducks into the military facility, there is one thing that immediately stands out to me. That's upsetting enough for Claire, because she's completely powerless to help, I understand, but at the same time as the player I'm thinking one step ahead, because if that thing is somewhere inside of the facility and Claire's mission is still to find Chris, which it is the last time I checked,
Yes, he can. I'm sure of it.
then sooner or later we're gonna have to deal with this head-bashing creature ourselves, right? Now that's a lovely image to have sitting in the back of your mind, isn't it? Then again, what was I expecting, right? Playing a Resident Evil game from Capcom. Hardly a relaxing holiday on some remote island. Making our way through the facility, even the shutters behind Claire start closing by themselves.
That was close.
And then when the laser sight appears again, it's pretty obvious our boy Fred, aka Scarface, meant exactly what he said earlier. He's not interested in simply getting rid of Claire, and will indeed proceed to enjoy dragging this out between them as he turns this whole facility into one big game with Claire in the middle of it all. To be fair though, compared to what he was saying earlier, from Alfred's point of view, she's the only person left alive he can blame for his military paradise falling apart, right? So Claire's gonna have to keep doing what she's been doing this whole game as she proceeds forward, navigating Al to the Freds, aka Scarface's maze, all while oversized worms and killer snatcher creatures and whatever else Umbrella's cooked up are lurking around every corner. Just pray whatever Chris taught his sister growing up is enough to get her through what Fred's House of Pain has got waiting for her. With all of what's going on then, even the save rooms don't feel quite as relaxing anymore. Not with our boy Fred and his lovely BOW pet hanging around every step you take.
Welcome, Claire. I so want to enjoy this.
Making her way into the next area, then the door closes behind her, and then out comes Stretch Armstrong, a bioorganic weapon with an arm that seems to stretch halfway across the facility. Now that's got me wondering a little. Is this another creature our boy Al personally keeps around, or was it released during the attack on the island? Now looking at how elaborate this whole section is, I'd say Scarface over here keeps a few killer snatchers on standby, just in case. Speaking of standby then, Claire wasn't exactly ready when she gets lifted up into the air by this bandy snatcher looking to do a slam dunk with her head. Before Scarface and Team Umbrella can score the winning points though, Steve dives in, blocks the alley-oop in bullet time and saves Claire. It's a good thing those intrusive thoughts I had earlier about smacking Steve around the head and taking the Lugers never happened, right? Because now Claire finally gets to thank him properly by making an honest trade for those Lugers.
Machine guns? For me?
You know the deal. In exchange for your Lugers.
Okay.
And of course, Scarface is gonna jump on the intercoms and completely mess up this nice little moment they've got going on.
He can join you in your descent into death.
Underneath all of that though, I kinda like what this scene quietly does for Steve's character, as Claire's trust in people is starting to rub off on him, and honestly for her sake, I'm glad it did, because even with all that training Chris passed down to her, it wasn't going to be enough to get her out of that slam dunk without Steve stepping in.
Alright! Huh?
However, in the next scene then, just when it feels like the two are finally starting to get into the rhythm though, Steve starts showing signs that still worry me. Not because he's a bad person or anything, but because every mistake he makes out here with Alfred looming over everything has consequences.
Unacceptable!
It's okay to be human and express emotion. I kinda thought Claire would be more on this side too, but I guess Chris's discipline and training has hardened her slightly. Steve though is different, because the more time we spend around him, the more obvious it becomes that his attitude towards people isn't confidence and it's more past burdens and damage from before, which also explains why his first instinct earlier in the game was to open fire before asking questions like Claire.
Then people?
But you know how this goes, the show must go on, because as the two continue onwards through Fred's little maze up ahead, more problems occur. The thing is though, the rotten floorboards up ahead pin Claire under the debris, leaving her vulnerable to attack. Now normally that wouldn't be much of an issue for Steve, right? Seeing as he went from 1 minute shooting at Claire to saving her life just a moment ago, but this little outburst from earlier is exactly what this scene was building up to.
Shut up!
No!
What's wrong, Steve? Shoot him!
No!
As you can imagine, Steve now has to make peace with losing what little family he had left.
Steve.
Seeing all of this unfold is only going to trigger that same separation anxiety Claire is already feeling from her own missing family member. Steve then at the moment has very, very little to celebrate, which goes without saying. Now, sure, on one hand, the chaos that attacked the island gave him a chance to escape and make up for the bad decisions and lack of trust between him and Claire so far. And he even started putting things right by saving her life. But after he opened up about how they both ended up here, this is one setback neither of them saw coming. His dad gambled everything chasing quick cash by leaking Umbrella's secrets. When they found out, they murdered Steve's mom and shipped him and his old man off to Scarface's lovely little holiday remote island. And we already know our boy Al and his posse of gangsters in lab coats from Umbrella were responsible for most of Steve's suffering. But thanks to the crazy man that attacked the island and spread the T-virus here,
Unacceptable!
they robbed Steve of any chance to confront his old man about his mistakes that tore his family apart in the first place. Instead, he's left saying goodbye to a zombie that used to be his old man.
Wait! I can't!
This is absolutely more than enough unresolved trauma to force anybody to grow up far quicker than they should. Arguably then both characters are in vulnerable states, with Steve trying to process losing the last piece of his family, while on the other hand Claire is desperately trying not to lose hers. With the way things are turning out for Steve, it could honestly go either way, but Claire on the other hand, Claire has shown that she'll put up with just about every bit of pushback that the island throws at her, and it's not going to slow her determination down, not a one bit. Even so then, I imagine leaving Steve behind wasn't an easy decision for her, but she has little choice here. She has to trust he'll find his way through this, while she's going to continue fighting to make sure she doesn't end up sharing the same fate as Steve.
It's okay now. Just rest.
So in the midst of all of this, the player can't forget about the fact that Steve was nice enough to accept Claire's trade and gift us those Lugers, right? To which now we're finally able to use to see what awaits us beyond that locked door in that palace save room from earlier. It's pretty much what you expected. It's a plain old office with a view. A stormy view, you know, beautiful, gothic, atmospheric. Yeah, I know I'm doing a little too much here, but let me have my fun. Although I will say the little secretary room in between somehow has more personality thanks to that save room music. Comparisons aside though, the office is really just a front for that hidden residence. The way it's set up then, you know, it definitely outdoes the palace below it. The way it gives off the looming over the whole island vibe. As Claire makes her way further, she manages to eavesdrop on a very interesting conversation, and I'm glad she does because we're finally starting to understand what we're actually up against.
Keep focused, brother. Our enemy is only a little girl. The revival of the Ashford family depends on your success, brother.
An entire family desperately trying to restore the Ashford name. Smack in between Claire, Steve, the T-virus outbreak wiping out most of the military forces here, and whoever attacked the island in the first place. Everything seems to be reaching a boiling point. Even Al's little games with Claire look like they're coming to an end once his sister confidently claims she can deal with both of them all by herself.
I will handle them both myself.
If Claire has to make her way through the Ashford family before she can reach her own, then I guess we've just got to sort of roll with it. It begs the question though, will Claire and Steve actually be ready for what Alexia brings to the table when she eventually throws down?
Is someone at the corridor?
Once the coast is clear though, it's really easy to fall back into their usual Resident Evil routine. But just as you start forgetting about that creepy castle, the game throws another classic puzzle at you, while it also quietly slips in some family drama along with it. Reading the file then, it suddenly puts all of this fancy schmancy stuff around us more into perspective, but it also leaves me wondering, why does this place feel like it was abandoned long before the T-virus ever reached the island, right?
Unacceptable!
I get why Al's furious after losing his military, but the pressure of trying to restore a dying family legacy clearly isn't helping him either.
How dare you!
It also explains why Claire's innocence frustrates him so much. This story is slowly moving away from the usual loony gangsters in lab coats and into something a little more unexpected. This broke, pretentious Ashford family desperately trying to fake their way back up to the top. And the second that you solve this puzzle, the game reminds you Alexia sits right at the center of it all. So then once again, it begs the question for me, based on the little that we've seen, if Al himself is being this much of a nuisance expectations for Claire and Steve, imagine his sister. She's gonna be on a whole other level, right? So while Claire keeps searching for Chris and Scarface keeps trying to protect what's left of his family legacy, Claire refuses to let any of this change who she is. Even surrounded by monsters, corruption, and people just at their absolute worst, right? She still chooses to help people. We saw it with the warden right at the start of the game, and we're going to continue seeing it everywhere Claire goes.
Anesthetic medicine. How kind of you.
Because of that then, her kindness in all of this crap going on feels even louder, surrounded by this much cruelty. If Al and his sister get their way, Claire and Steve could easily be next in line to become part of their little game and show, which, you know, would be one heck of an awful surprise.
Please try and keep me amused, and do not disappoint me by dying too soon.
Speaking of surprises though, this one happens to sneak up on Claire something crazy, wicked.
Greetings. You must be the lovely Claire Redfield.
Who are you?
Let's just say that I'm a ghost, coming back to haunt your dear brother.
Wesker?
You could even say he's doing Al's job for him. While it's satisfying for us to finally put a face to the mystery attacker who accidentally allowed Claire to escape in the first place, it quickly boils down to Claire facing certain annihilation. She's out here all by herself with no chance to escape from this ultimate party crasher. So up until now he's basically been Umbrella's top virologist, essentially a gangster in a lab coat, who by the way also happens to have a black belt in kicking Claire up the backside. Goes without saying then, after the reveal of him being the attacker of this island, Wesker couldn't care less about the Ashfords' royal delusions and is only here to steal from them. But for Claire, his arrival changes everything because he's an absurdly overpowered roadblock while at the same time is muscling in on Ashford's territory. So I guess the two really aren't as clicked up as Al made out at the start.
My grandfather is one of the original founders of Umbrella Inc.
Mind you though, Umbrella probably still supports the Ashfords in some capacity, presuming then that Wesker clearly isn't the same person he was back in Resident Evil 1. He's most definitely gone rogue, doing his own thing now, right? So then, was I really wrong for calling him a gangster in a lab coat? Looking at it from another perspective though, he's also at the very same time Claire's biggest link to Chris. If Wesker's here, then Chris can't be too far behind.
If we stay here, all of us will end up dead. What should we do, Wesker?
And somehow then, this whole mess just got even bigger.
Oh, time to die, Doctor.
Wesker.
And despite all of that, somehow miraculously Claire survives this ordeal, which once again plays into the little bit of mercy she's somehow been living off of since the start of the game, keeps on following her around. Seriously and honestly then, kinda begs the question, with all of this stuff going on around her, is there any chance of making it off of the island in one piece? Let alone getting my hands on the new PlayStation. And the other thing is, even after Wesker disappears, it feels like his presence never sort of really leaves. Between him then, Al, and whatever Alexia's got waiting in the wings, the game starts competing with itself over who's the biggest looming threat. Watching it all unfold is stressful enough, never mind what Claire must be feeling. But it genuinely feels like time is running out pretty quick.
I despise Chris.
So then, can Claire really survive another run-in with Wesker, or Al's collection of knuckle-dragging, head-bashing, slam-dunking BOWs? Kind of feels like Claire at this point has got both the T-800 and the T-1000 hunting her at the same time, with the odds then really being stacked against her, which naturally makes you wonder, when Chris finally shows up, is he going to be enough to even those odds? Let's just hope then he's packing more than a first aid spray, and maybe even a black belt of his own. And while Claire again searches the Ashford castle for a way off of this crazy island, she then ends up getting blindsided by Alexia, and apparently also fancies taking shots at Claire at point blank range.
For the pride of the Ashford family, I will kill you. Wait!
Steve was nowhere to be seen when Bloody Eyes over here decided to pay Claire a visit, but it's better late than never, and his reflexes couldn't have been better timed.
Steve! A secret door!
After her!
Kinda goes without saying then, thank God that my intrusive thoughts from earlier in the game about me just simply smacking him upside the head instead of Claire then honestly accepting his trade. Nice one. She saved herself and gained an ally when she desperately needed one. Turns out patience and seeing the best in people saved the day.
Then people?
The next scene also tells us something fairly interesting. Scarface rushes in trying to protect Alexia, completely fails, and leaves enough blood and wig behind for both Claire and us to work out what the hell is happening here exactly. It appears then he's been covering up for his sister all of this time, which is actually terrible news for him, and also goes towards explaining why he's becoming more desperate by the minute. You know, with the simple facts that Wesker's attacked his island, his military's been wiped out, and Claire and Steve won't stay in the ground and keep popping back up like whack-a-moles. The little games that he's playing with Claire then are slowly slipping out of control, and I love Claire and Steve's reaction over here.
Okay, that's it. Let's get out of here.
Apparently zombies, giant worms, killer BOWs, and being shot wasn't enough, but Scarface over here dressing up and pretending to be two different people, that's where they draw the line.
The self-destruct system has been
That freak! He's trying to
activated.
blow us up along with
All
the entire
personnel
facility.
Now then, things really get kicked up into a higher gear, letting us know that Alfred's done messing around over here. And now, I know I mentioned the T-800 and the T-1000 from the Terminator 2 movie, but Al manages to find a way to one-up himself, unleashing a similar model tyrant to the T-800 from the Terminator 2 movie, making for the ultimate knuckle-dragging menace, now fortunately for Claire looking to chase her all around the island. Speaking of then, just up ahead, with the island literally falling apart around her, Claire finds herself trapped in between collapsing debris and a very intimidating bioorganic weapon staring her down. So then after this encounter, once the turret is finally down, she manages to regroup with Steve for the first time then. In a while, it actually feels like freedom might be within reach. They've got a plane, they've survived all of the rubbishness going on in the island, surely this nightmare's nearly over. Well, we've got a bit of a problem and we're about to go investigate. The tyrant has somehow followed them all the way up here, which can only mean two things, right? One is obviously got unfinished business with Claire, and two, this knuckle dragon menace gets more airtime than an NBA player. Fair play to him though, following the gang all the way up into the sky just to continue to scrap is some ridiculous next level commitment. And not long after that, count on Alfred to spoil the mood immediately after.
What's happening?
I don't know.
He hijacks the plane and sends it exactly where he wants it to go. And earlier in the game, if you took the time to read the confession letter, his behavior makes a little more sense. The Ashford family is everything to him. He's willing to burn this entire island to the ground if that's what it takes to protect what's left of it.
Tell me, who do you work for?
Meanwhile then, Claire is still fighting to get her own family back, and poor Steve is still coming to terms with losing his. So now they've got no choice but to sit back and ride to wherever Al is going to send them. All while Wesker is still somewhere out there doing Wesker things.
Oh, how your brother will weep to see you die.
During this little bit of downtime though, Steve's character has quietly come full circle, with him starting the story looking out for nobody but himself, to now in the story where he's completely falling for Claire. And absolutely fair play to him, because who could blame him, right? Her fierce determination mixed with her kindness that she never seems to lose is probably the exact opposite of everything he's ever known. fairly easy to see then why he'd find deep comfort in someone like that. But unfortunately though, that comfort doesn't last very long, because the second the two realise where Alfred's autopilot has taken them, things are about to get even more bumpy on the road ahead. With all things considered then, at this point the best thing the two can do for themselves after they get done counting their blessings is to pick themselves up and continue navigating the new place. Bearing that in mind, with also this new looming worry for Steve as well though. You know, because of the simple fact that he's already dealing with a lot right now, and now he's got this thing for Claire on top of all of that.
Thanks.
If he lets those feelings cloud his better judgment, then trying to be the hero like he normally is could end up getting one of them hurt. With the stakes only getting higher as they go on. Scarface over here couldn't care less whether they make it out alive. Wesker, the rogue virus in this whole matrix that they've got going on, is still lurking around somewhere also. Not to mention that the guards in this Antarctic facility have already turned into flesh-eating zombies, indicating that his reach clearly knows no bounds. Goes without saying then, it makes me wonder how good old Al is taking all of this.
Unacceptable!
Even all the way out here in the freezing cold, Wesker's chaos has reached another one of his family's bases. Not a problem for Claire though. Zombies are almost the least of her worries. She's got more than enough experience dealing with them than anybody else around. Right up until she sees this though. And I don't mean the rat, I mean this. Seeing Claire trying to process what she's even looking at, whether it's another victim to her, another experiment. The list of things trying to kill the pair somehow just got even longer. Not a very good start then, is it? So far it's cold, it's dark, seems like apparently Al forgot to pay the electric bill.
How dare you!
But after Claire restores the power, Steve discovers another nearby facility.
Then if we can break through the wall with that digging vehicle, we might have a chance.
Okay.
Steve, watch out!
No! It's toxic gas!
Steve's little blunder though nearly ruins everything. While trying to work then, his mind drifted back to Claire, and that's exactly what I was worried about. For now it's only a minor setback, but it begs the question, how long before one mistake leaves the pair in the same position as the poor soul chained up downstairs? However though, once Claire shuts off the gas and clears the path ahead of them, another obstacle immediately takes its place.
Take a game, Claire.
I shall enjoy watching you shriek in agony.
This time though, Steve doesn't miss with his machine gun, leaving Al, aka Scarface over here, to fall. To what looks like the deepest hole Capcom could find. As bad as this sounds, I wouldn't have it any other way, but you gotta understand, bullying the pair all game like rats in a maze, Scarface over here was asking for it. By playing stupid games, guess what? You win stupid prizes.
Have it your way then!
But then this happens.
What was that?
And the timing's almost a little too perfect. It makes me wonder if the game is trying to tell us this thing's about to avenge his boy, Alfred over here, or it could just simply be another monster standing between Claire and her family. Up on the surface though, right in the middle of this blizzard, it actually looks like the way forward. Ladies first though, because the second Claire steps outside, something else is already waiting.
Okay, let's go!
Come on, let's go! What, are you scared?
Steve does his usual shenanigans, plays the hero, he does what he can, but he can't help himself because in the end it's Claire's fight, which to be fair is becoming a bit of a habit at this point.
Forget about me. Run!
Steve hangs on just long enough for Claire to drag him back up to safety, and to be fair then, if you're still on the fence about him because of all the mistakes he's made so far, I'd cut him a little slack here, seeing as he's saved Claire's life more than once now.
Father! I swear I'll protect you next time, Claire.
Speaking of judgment then, Al over here isn't quite done just yet. Although after falling from that distance, he's definitely seen better days. Whatever broke his fall then, it most certainly wasn't an angel looking out for Claire and Steve. Oh no. It's more like sympathy for the devil, simply because it gives him just enough strength to awaken something even worse. Something that makes the Bandersnatchers, the Tyrant and even Wesker simply look like warm-up acts while Claire and Steve continue pushing towards freedom, finally starting to trust each other.
Perfect! We'll be able to ride right over to the Australian base with this.
Let's go!
The game quietly cuts away to Alexia, comforting her brother's body. The amount of contempt on her face says everything, and suddenly I completely understand why Al spent the entire game worshipping his sister. No wonder Wesker came all this way looking for whatever the Ashfords have been hiding.
What is that?
As the game then pans back to Alexia quietly stroking Alfred's head while Claire and Steve lie defeated in the snow, it finally sinks in that while the game made Alfred out to be completely out of his mind, and for the most part that's absolutely true, he got one thing right: respecting Alexia. No wonder Al spent the whole game worshipping her, because after seeing what she can do when she's deeply upset anyway, there's no way in hell that I would want to mess with her either. There is no doubt that her power level just now shattered a few scouters from the Dragon Ball Z universe. Now, before we can fully process just how much pushback Claire and Steve have suffered, the game flips the whole narrative on us, right? Because we go from asking, is Claire ever gonna find her brother, to Chris over here now not even knowing if his sister is alright. And from what we've seen from Miss Over 9000, really kinda remains to be seen. Now, it's not all bad though. There is a little bit of catharsis waiting for Chris though, even if his arrival gets off to a rough start. He bumps into the prison warden from the start of the game. He then proceeds to tell Chris that his sister made it and escaped the island. For Chris, that's enough to lower his guard. Just not completely, because the warden over here sorta kinda all of a sudden then gets himself set up with a surprise date with that oversized worm we've been seeing from the start of the game. As you can imagine then, a little skirmish is gonna ensue, allowing Chris then to jump in and manage to force it to cough up the warden. However, it's a little too late. Even after Chris begs him to hold on, Rodrigo permanently phases into another dimension. Putting Dragon Ball to one side though just for a second, his final words end up echoing through the entire story.
Looks like I can meet my family again.
And seriously then, this little moment manages to capture the whole theme of Code Veronica absolutely perfectly. Chris has finally caught up to his sister's journey.
Don't worry, Claire. I'm coming to save you.
The thing is with Chris though, while he's on the right track for Claire, the problem is he's arrived just a little too late. So instead of arriving to greet his family, we're now trying to find where his family's gone. Looking around the place though, it's fairly easy to get nostalgic, but putting it to one side, it's also fairly strange seeing the lovely island we were on earlier with Claire in this state. And also to make matters worse, Chris arrives right in the middle of the Ashfords and Wesker's little operation.
Who is that?
The king was loved, but the queen was feared.
Thanks to the cameras watching Chris, our ex-gangster in a lab coat over here decides to welcome him properly by sending a few familiar faces his way.
Enjoy.
It's a nice little trip down memory lane for Chris.
What are they? It's Rebecca! She must be upstairs!
It isn't long before he gets another surprise from his former captain when he comes across Wesker himself.
Yeah, like this.
Wesker!
Before and even during this cutscene more than ever then, it's pretty safe to presume Wesker's gone totally rogue with some unknown organization that has hired him to capture Alexia, and Wesker, so far from what we've seen, is more than happy enough to flatten Claire or Chris like a pancake for getting in his way. To give some credit back to Chris though, he actually starts this encounter full of confidence, which shouldn't really surprise us. The same guy who trained his sister Claire, that same level of resilience and perseverance we've seen carry her through this whole nightmare so far, came from her brother Chris. Unlucky for Chris though, his confidence is only going to get him so far against Bloody Eyes over here. But just when things are looking mad grim though for him, Alexia's timing saves Chris without even meaning to. Her interruption forces Wesker to let him go, although the commotion wakes up the bandit snatcher nearby resting in one of the pods. So then we go from watching Chris get the absolute stars kicked out of him to immediately having to deal with one of Alfred's knuckle dragon slam dunking BOW pets. If it isn't already painfully obvious by now, Wesker's brutality is no joke, and neither is Miss Over 9000's power either. Chris has already been through quite a lot already, just stepping foot on the island, let alone having to deal with Wesker, who's boiled his blood more than enough after learning that he attacked the island and put his sister in danger. So then we can only imagine what's going to happen to him when he finds out what Miss 9000 over here has done to his sister. Once again then, it's family that keeps the story moving, continuing to help out Chris over here push through what's left of Scarface's island, especially after everything Wesker's put him through. Blowing the heads off of a few BOWs is probably the healthiest thing that he can do right now to recover from all of this ruckus that he's suffered so far. Safe to say though that he's more than capable of taking on this island all by himself. So once he's ready then, Chris secures a plane of his own and can finally set off to catch up with his sister, if she's even still alive. Chris reaches the last known location of Claire.
Okay, let's go!
By the time Chris arrives on the scene, everywhere he goes is in an even worse state than when Claire left it. So then I can't imagine what's running through his mind right now, most likely praying that his sister isn't somewhere amongst all of this crap. And up ahead then, to add to all of this rubbishness around him, Chris also clocks the surveillance cameras. As if Wesker wasn't already getting under the guy's skin, right? There's no doubt in his mind then that Wesker sucks majorly, especially after the whooping is put on him since being around him. The game wastes no time then reminding us that he's still about and is being a menace, but that is settled in as well with all the surveillance stuff, you know? As the game wonderfully allows us to get caught throwing a pack of hunters our way the moment we land. Everyone unlucky enough to cross paths with Wesker ends up paying for it one way or another, successfully poisoning everybody's plotline. Speaking of poison then, up ahead while Chris is trying to work out who could have done something this crazy twisted, Alexia then pops up with a few, you know, lovely rhymes of her own, clearly having the time of her life.
Said the spider to the fly, "How do you wish to die?"
But there's nothing amusing about any of this, as she casually talks about murdering someone for getting in her way, which, you know, immediately makes me think about Alfred over here, Mr. Scarface. After everything he did to protect his sister, what actually became of him after he released her? There's background notes and memos that can be found that do answer a couple of questions that you may have during this part. After Alfred discovers the origins of his birth, he doesn't take it so well and puts a plan together to have his father taken out and experimented on. And through the rest of Alfred's diary, we're introduced to 3 Ashford jewels that prove you're a true heir to the family. Which means then this poor individual we've been looking at this whole time is their dad, because he has one of these jewels from the diary. The Ashford twins were not conceived in a normal way, so why would they act normal, right? Their actions, if it wasn't already obvious, are totally insane. If that's not over 9,000, I don't know what is. Well, apart from Goku. But the game's symbolism around this place seems to indicate that. The Ashford family comes second, most definitely, and power absolutely comes first. Everything she's built, the symbolism, the architecture, the ants, it all sort of starts to fit together at this point. I mean, this massive anthill in front of me definitely gives it away. For somebody who sees almost everyone as beneath her, everybody else though, as you can imagine, and from what you've already seen outside of her brother, it's a completely different story. I'd imagine Kristen is doing everything he can to remain calm, but is still only human. Even an ex-Stars member can have their limits, right? Before they reach their breaking point. And that brings me to the hidden conundrum we've yet to come across, and it's, hey, we've already got 2 of the Ashford jewels, one from Alfred and one from his dad. I wonder where the other jewel is. Which raises the obvious question, how on earth are we going to do that? I mean, Wesker's already a handful, let alone Alexia. I doubt we've seen the full extent of her power anyway. Things can only get better from here, right? Well, sort of, because we're only halfway there. As Chris pushes deeper into the base, he finally finds Claire wrapped up in some kind of weird cocoon looking rubbishness.
Chris! I missed you so much.
I know. But we have to get out of here.
Not yet.
Just after Claire tells Chris about Steve, she collapses back to the ground. And if Chris can't find a serum somewhere in this facility, then you have to consider that he's just got to look around a bit by himself, right? I mean, it could be worse. As an example then, I would hate to ask Wesker for one if he's the only guy carrying it around. Not sure why I even thought of that, to be fair, especially after everything that we've seen. He's much better at spreading poison and suffering than curing it. Just an example of how it could be worse. You know, probably best to leave him wherever he is right now, along with Miss 9000. And I'm pretty sure Chris is also thinking the same thing as me, as he's rushing around looking for the serum instead of just straight up panicking, because now isn't the time to be vulnerable with those 2 psychos very close by.
Alexia!
The 2 only get a brief moment of genuine catharsis after Chris saves Claire, because Miss 9000 herself ends up showing up. Crazy timing, right? I know. And while we're there on the subject of crazy, what's with the mansion hidden inside of a frozen umbrella facility like this, huh? What kind of mad operation were they running here? Anyway then, Alexia's here and she starts throwing around lines about genetically inferior siblings. Make me wonder, what is this all about really? From the couple of files that we've read about this then, we already know that the Ashfords aren't exactly a normal family. So is she hinting at some genetically engineered experiment? Almost like Metal Gear's Les Enfants Terribles project? I'm not completely sure, but whatever she's become, she's clearly operating on a different level. The 2 leg it after Alexia only for that massive tentacle creature to block their way. You know, the same one that burst out when Al woke her up earlier in the game.
Alexia!
Yeah, okay, the situation's not going as planned. The collapse leaves Chris trapped under the debris. But you know, things can be worse, like we discussed just before this. Now that the roles have been completely reversed, Chris is the one pinned down, injured and vulnerable. Claire now has no choice but to keep on going alone because...
No!
You see, it could be worse.
Got to save Steve. Go!
Just a little bit up ahead then, Claire manages to find Steve and he seems okay, just a little worn out, but something definitely feels a little off, especially when he mentions what Alexia's done. That alone just signals this isn't gonna go well. Not to mention the scream from earlier as well. Steve at this point has completely lost it and nearly wipes the floor with Claire, but she just about manages to trap herself behind the bars. But the only thing with that is though, there's no escape, because as she enters this part of the prison, the door locked behind her. Now, all of this pain and suffering so far then points back to Alexia taking on the role of mess with my family and incur the wrath of the queen sort of thing, right? Thing is though, Al didn't exactly do us any favors before he perished. Just so you know, before you go in on these guys, I did provoke them first, or something like that, which to be fair, I wouldn't expect anyway from Alfred. Not that it will, because Alexia is the queen of his universe, so how can that happen anyway, right? But either way, if you're unlucky enough to get in her way, you're probably not going to last very long. I mean, just ask our boy Steve over there. Too soon? And to make things even worse at this point, while Claire's waiting to be terminated, Miss 9000 herself pops in just to make sure Steve's job of aiming for Claire's neck is a whole lot easier. The thing with that is though, what Miss 9000 aka Alexia didn't anticipate was the very thing that worried me about Steve from earlier, when he let his crush on Claire get the better of him. It caused mistakes that could have made things much worse for the two back then, but he did make a promise to himself that he wouldn't let it go down like that again, and that is exactly what manages to resurface here, just when we need it. The moment he sees Claire in this situation, he's instantly reminded of her nearly getting eaten by his father. Even through all of this pain then, he still doesn't let it go, because silly Miss 9000 over here couldn't take that away from him. Steve then manages to turn his greatest vulnerability into his final act of strength by freeing Claire. After everything we've been through with Steve on this journey, he's gone through so much, For most of it, he was completely alone, before Claire even came along. But when she did, her kindness at first actually poisoned him, because it dragged him back into that vulnerable place that he spent so long trying to bury.
Believe me, I know.
Because of his own family letting him down and being the main source of his misery at that point. But thanks to him being influenced by Claire's fierce determination to protect her family, combined with her unmatched kindness in the face of so much uncalled for rubbishness around them, ultimately then forcing Steve to step out of his shell and risk everything. And yeah, even if that emotional vulnerability ultimately leads to a tragic end, she gave a lost and broken kid something worth holding on to and standing up for.
You're warm.
Steve, you've got to hang in there, okay? My brother's come to save us. We're getting out of here.
Your brother kept his promise. I'm sorry, I cannot.
What are you saying?
I'm glad that I met you. I love you, Claire.
Steve?
I think that in this moment, with everything we've watched, it's pretty safe to direct all that anger towards Miss 9000 over here, because Alexia by now has made it crystal clear that she is the ultimate looming threat in all of this story about family, especially after how she just brutally inflicted that same suffering onto Steve for what he did to her brother. Now, I don't want to play devil's advocate here, but from Alexia's perspective then, that's exactly how she would have seen it after finding Alfred in her arms. And that's what makes this whole thing even more uncomfortable, because by this point, I'm honestly more terrified of what family can do than a bunch of silly zombies. This crazy level of pushback then on Claire's side seems to follow her brother Chris as he gets caught in the middle of Wesker and Alexia's standoff, which goes a little something like this. I want that T Veronica virus, and Alexia is basically like, nah, you're not worthy, before transforming into this, and the look on Wesker's face says it all. her power level now really is over 9,000. She makes quick work of him, and this is Wesker we're talking about. Even with his inhuman reflexes, is no match for it. The guy that seamlessly bullied the Redfields, and now imagine being stuck with Chris, arriving just in time to replace Wesker's position after he legged it. Chris somehow manages to survive, and after that showdown with Alexia, we're finally able to collect the last jewel to not only progress further, but hopefully secure a way out of this place for good. But while Chris is none the wiser, the game reminds us that we still need to hold on to worry when it shows. You know, even though we saw it all coming after the way the game built up the Ashfords, I'd expect nothing less, right? But still, it buys Chris just enough time to navigate the facility up ahead, and also thanks to the pass card from Claire that she found.
Listen, Claire. We have to get out of here immediately.
Claire, not only in a vulnerable state right now, can't really do much anyway because of the security locks that have been triggered, so Chris has to find a way to open them and pray Claire can just hold on a little longer. Chris then manages to free his sister, but their reunion as always is brief, as you can imagine. The two have to split up again as Chris takes up arms against Alexia, making sure that Claire can escape safely, but can't I miss over 9,000 to make things more difficult, right?
What are we gonna do?
Okay, turn the key clockwise simultaneously on 3! I'll keep her busy. Just go for the emergency elevator.
Chris, but...
I can take care of this.
And just when you think you've got it figured out, Alexia takes on a new form. And now this. And in this new form then, it offers her far more mobility, making the fight even nastier for Chris. Before we can even bask in the victory of finally annihilating Miss 9000, the game is once again quick to remind us that beating Alexia was only half the solution, because now the entire place is falling apart. And at the same time, just to keep the pressure cooker boiling, Wesker rears his ugly mug again to replace Alexia as the true final boss in all of this for Chris and Claire.
Claire! No!
Surprisingly though, you know, Wesker's actually pretty cooperative.
Fine.
Claire!
To him, he's already secured what he came for, Steve's body carrying the T. Veronica virus.
Maybe he'll come back alive, just as I did, and be able to see your sister again.
You freak!
Don't you touch him!
So what's left then for him is unfinished business with Chris. But the fact that Chris spent the entire game catching up to Claire, you think that alone would be enough to wear him out, but these Stars guys are just built totally different, as he not only managed to save Claire multiple times, but he also took out Miss 9000 over there, and even Wesker picks up on it too.
I don't know where you get your confidence, Chris.
I'm right there with Wesker, to be fair. To keep that level of confidence after the beating he got during their first encounter, it truly is inspiring. Not to mention the fact that we've spent the whole game watching the Ashford family loom over everyone, yet even that wasn't enough to stop the Redfields. Claire ran wild through the island, and now even Chris is standing toe to toe with Wesker himself. Just like the Wu-Tang Clan then, the Redfields aren't nothing to mess with. And just like before then, Chris thinks on his feet and finds a way out. In the end then, it's the self-destruct system that wins, and it's the collapsing facility that finally forces Wesker to retreat, as well as Chris, as he barely escapes that nightmare and immediately has to double time it because the countdown's still ticking. And he ends up managing to keep the promise that Steve couldn't. After all of this then, it's easy to imagine the separation anxiety Claire feels finally lifting now that her brother's back beside her. But so far then, just like the rest of the game, Code Veronica never lets you sit with that feeling for very long, not before it drops another problem in their lap, with Chris reminding Claire that they've still got unfinished business and a lot more work to do because the gangsters in lab coats are still out there continuing to manufacture killer viruses. When you look back on everything that's happened in Code Veronica then, it keeps coming back to family and a heck of a lot of gambling. Starting it all off with Claire gambling herself simply because she refuses to give up on her brother. Alfred then jumps in, gambling everything around him to preserve whatever's left of his family legacy. And Wesker then doing something fairly similar but on a more grander scale by gambling everybody's life on this island purely just to chase that ultimate power that he's looking for.
I want it. Now!
This ultimately leads to Claire being reunited with her brother at long last, but along the way it was an extremely messy journey full of bloodshed and pointless torture. She walked out of this nightmare carrying the weight of somebody who perished just for backing her up and sticking by her side through all of this, forcing her then to leave this island far removed from that naive college student who rode into Raccoon City simply to find her brother by learning the absolute hardest way that sometimes saving the people you love means watching everyone else around you burn in the crossfire. When it's all said and done though, nobody truly gets a happy ending here. Wesker gets what he came for, leaving a trail of destruction behind him, including the initial raid on the island that robbed Steve of any chance to ever make peace with his father. Chris leaves beaten and humiliated, carrying that unfinished business into the future, and while Claire finally finds her brother, it's only after paying an extremely heavy and permanent price along the way, bearing witness to Steve losing everything in front of her. As for the Redfields then, they're gonna keep fighting until Capcom decides when they've finally served their purpose, or they may just end up disappearing into Resident Evil history like poor old Billy Cohen over there from Resident Evil 0.
Thank you, Rebecca.
If you enjoyed watching Claire survive the nightmare she found herself stuck in, then click here to see Jill Valentine face the collapse of Raccoon City in the original Resident Evil 3.